Great. Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you, Sam. Really appreciate the invite from the Chai Hack Night team. MB and I are both based in New York City, but very much appreciate getting to come in and talk about some of the work we've been doing with Namesake. So, yeah, the chat today is about Namesake, which is a tool and community that we build to help people in the US with the legal name change process and gender marker change process. And so we're going to go through that today. But to start with some introductions, again, my name is Ava, pronouns they and she. I am the co-founder of Namesake, designer, web developer. I like building simple and accessible tools for the public good. And MB?
And I'm MB, she or it pronouns. I've recently joined Namesake to contribute to the web app. And my day job is that I run a studio called Lickability, where we build apps that also focus on accessibility. So let's go through what we're going to talk about today. We're going to start with some background on Namesake, how we started, and what the deal is with what we're doing. We're going to talk a little bit about how name changes work in the US today. If you've never done a name change, you might learn something here about how it works across our 50 states. And then we'll talk about what we do to make that process easier, especially for trans people in our country. And we'll close out with your questions. So if you think of them, pop them in the Q&A section in Zoom, and we'll try to get to as many as we can.
Cool. Thanks, MB. So a little bit of background about Namesake. We were founded in 2021 by a friend of mine named Luke Lennon, who at that point had, transitioned for a few years, changed their name, had been, getting their life in order, what felt like, and feeling more on top of things than they had been in a while. And then in 2020, they tried to get a car loan, only to discover that they were credit invisible or credit thin due to their name change. So went in, wanted to buy a car and discovered that, the only loans that they could get were super predatory. They weren't going to be able to work out, and this was all due to their name change. Um, and so they said, this is probably the most financially literate I had ever been. My credit score was solid. In essence, I thought I had done everything right, and still my future felt out of my hands. So, born from this frustration, they decided, like, there's got to be a better way to do this. We have to make it easier for people to navigate this process, for them to update their names and to, spread that update out to all the organizations that need to know about it. And so they founded a startup named Namesake in partnership with the Massachusetts Transgender Political Coalition, who we still partner with today, and started building tools online to help people with the name change process, as well as partnering and running name change clinics and things like that for folks in Boston, where Luke is based. Um, and we have continued that work today. I came on board in 2022, I believe, initially to help Luke out with some design work. And I just thought, hey, this app is really cool. I've also been through the name change process and am still continuing to navigate this with different organizations. I would love to use my skills as a designer, as a developer, as somebody who builds things for the web to make this easy for other people who are navigating the process. And so that's what we have continued to do. And so before we get to the Namesake application and some of the things that we do itself, I wanted to talk a little bit about name changes in the US and what some of the unique challenges there are. So MB, you want to take over?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've never changed your name in the US, you might think that you just fill out a form and it's done, but nothing could be further from the truth. Actually, you have to fill out so many forms. A court order, often social security, passport, ID, driver's license. Then maybe you want to get your birth certificate up to date, various insurance, banks, things like that. You got to tell your work often, all your social media accounts, which can make it a pain. And then any legal agreements that you're part of, you got to update your voicemail if you're still accepting telephone calls, and then any publications that you've made, scientific research bylines. So there's a lot to do, and it takes a long time. Um, I want to talk about some of the legal parts because that's what we help with the most right now. The first one of those is the court order, which for many people is the first step in their name change process after they've told their friends and family what their new name is. Um, There are publication requirements. A publication requirement is just a state telling you that you need to publish information about your name change in a local newspaper. And this is really, really common still in 2025. So 13% of trans adults that live in the United States require publication of a name change announcement in a newspaper or something similar. And 1 in 5 trans adults live in states with unclear requirements, where individual courts might decide that you need to publish in a newspaper. So this isn't great because this is a barrier both in terms of time and attention, but also in terms of finances because it costs money to make these publications on top of the forms that you're already filing with the court. And this is also the case in Massachusetts, where we have started out. Uh, it's a similar story for driver's licenses. If you want to change your gender marker, that's the little thing that says M or F or X. Um, 17% of trans adults live in states that don't allow for updating their gender marker on their driver's license at all, which can lead to really unsafe situations for folks where you need to show your ID. Consider like you need to show your ID at work, which might out you, or even at a bar or somewhere that you're going in public that requires ID. 13% of trans adults live in states that require proof of surgery, court order, and/or amended birth certificate to change gender marker. And because everyone's transition is individual, folks may be transitioning without some of these things. So that's not great either. So we have a lot of progress that we can make there. Some more stats to think about. Overall, trans adults reporting that they have the name that they want on their IDs. 48% of us say that we have it on none of our IDs. None of our IDs have the name that we actually want and use. 33% of us say that we have it on all of our IDs and 20% on some of our IDs. So we really want to increase that number of trans folks who feel like they have their name on all of their IDs. And gender markers, it's even worse. 58% of us say that we don't have it on any of our IDs, 19% on all of them, and 23% on some. So that's where we are, and we're going to talk a little bit more about where we think we're going and how we can help. But before we get to that, let's also talk about the costs, because this isn't just an issue of filling out forms. It also costs money, and it costs a different amount of money to get this court order to change your name by state. And so you'll see here on this graph that it can cost anywhere from $70, $80, all the way up to close to $500. And this amount of money is not the full cost of your name change, right? You might have additional fees for visiting a notary public to get your documents notarized, or another $100 for updating your passport, or more for updating your driver's license. This is just the cost estimated of doing the court order part. And these fees add up. A lot of trans people face income inequality issues, and these dollar amounts don't match up with the income in these states. So in some cases, like in Utah, for example, it's $375 to do a name change. That's extremely expensive for the average income in that state. And it is not getting easier. The Trump administration has urged the Supreme Court to prevent transgender people from choosing sex markers on passports at all. This is after an executive order earlier in the administration that made this change, and then a court that reversed it. So we're constantly fighting on this front, and organizations like ACLU and other legal organizations are fighting this in court. So what do we do? What do we do to make this better? What do we do to help trans people across the country change their name and gender markers? Namesake does 3 things. First, we partner with, pair up with organizations like the Massachusetts Transgender Political Coalition that are on-the-ground organizations in these states to offer financial aid and run name change clinics, both in person and remotely, like on Zoom like this. Then on the technology front, which we're really excited to talk to you about tonight, we build an open source web application that allows people to securely fill out forms. We encrypt all of their data so it can't be easily leaked. We track their progress, and we help them actually make progress on the legal name change and gender marker process. And then we also are building community. We manage a Discord server where people can ask questions and find communal support as they navigate the process, regardless of what state they're in. If you're interested in this and you want to learn more, you can find out more on our website at namesake.fyi. But just know that in the first Namesake launched in 2021, and in those 4 years, we've helped over 1,000 kids and adults in Massachusetts with this process, and we've also helped connect folks to over $45,000 in financial assistance to help with the costs associated with changing your name. So now I'd like to go through a demo, but before I show you our application and what we do, I want to show you what the process would look like if you were in Massachusetts trying to change your name without Namesake. So you would Google it and you'd end up on a website like this, mass.gov. And sure, it says there's 5 steps, but when you start to read this, it's a very, very long scroll, and there's lots of explanations and links to other things, and you might just sort of get confused and decide, oh, I don't need to actually worry about this. It gets a little bit more complicated if you want to avoid that newspaper publication requirement. Then you're going to see a document that looks like this. This is a motion. This is the what is it? CJD 400?
GT 400,
CJD
yeah.
400. This is a document that you need to fill out if you want to avoid that requirement. It's a waiver, but it doesn't give you any instructions on how to fill it out. You just have to know the right way, or you need a lawyer to help you, and that's even more money. So what did we do? We built this web app, and it looks like this. It's a lot friendlier. It's designed with modern web standards in mind, accessibility in mind. We try to make it easy. We try to make it. It's never going to be quite fun, but we try to make it, at least not painful. So we tell you how you're going to change your legal name. You're going to choose a name. You're going to file a petition. You're going to update your other documents, and we give you along the sidebar these things that we call quests, which are the right order to do these things in, because some of these things have dependencies on each other. Um, let's go through an example of just the first part of the process, the court order in Massachusetts. So you wind up on a page like this with some information. You're going to answer some questions. So you put in your new name. Let's say my name's MB. Then you put in your current legal name. I'm not going to tell you my current legal name. So we'll just put in Johnny Appleseed. And then you give us the reason why you're changing your name. Now, if you're doing this on the form, you might not know what to put here, but we give you a helpful tip. Just tell us a basic reason. That's going to work just fine. And this is validated by our folks who do this every day on the legal side of things. Contact information is pretty standard. All these are autofillable fields, so you can get through them faster. Place where you were born. We'll just say that I was born in Philadelphia, which I was. Date of birth, easy enough. Then things like address, and whether you've changed your name legally before. I have not changed my name legally, and I have not yet. I haven't changed it before, so I'm just going to check no for that when we get down there. But some of these things reveal additional questions. So if you've changed your name before, the court might want to know, for instance, what your previous names were. And we only reveal those questions if it's relevant to you, which makes it easier to fill out this form and less overwhelming. Let's pick a county here. I've not changed my name before. I've never used another name or alias. Do you need an interpreter? I don't. Share my pronouns with the court staff? Sure, why not? We'll go with she, her for that purpose. And do I want my documents back? Yes, please. Now we get to the waiving the newspaper requirement. I would like to do this. And again, here we give you advice on how to have this go well. Talk about why this might be a threat to your privacy or safety. Be as specific to your personal situation as possible. Explain that you're not changing your name for an impermissible reason. You're not trying to avoid debts. This will help you convince a judge in Massachusetts that you probably don't need to publish in the newspaper. Similar situation for impounding. We won't go through that today, but you might not want your name change published by the court either. And then, do you need help with the money side of things? If so, we can help you there as well by connecting you to some funds. And finally, mother's maiden name to look up court records. Once you're done all of this, you click download and save, and you get a PDF. It looks like this. We give you a cover page that tells you exactly what we filled out for you and some instructions on how to take care of it. You print out these forms and you see that they've all been filled out with the information that you entered in the correct spots. And that is how we help make name changes simpler for people in Massachusetts and eventually all across the United States. Ava, back to you.
Sure. Thanks for the demo. Yeah, there's a lot there, and definitely happy to get into more of it as folks ask questions or as we have Q&A. But a big focus on what we've been building with Namesake is to try to make this as user-friendly and as accessible as possible. Especially for filling out court forms that people may not have familiarity with or understand, all of the legalese that is in there. Even something like, what does it mean to impound a case? How does that actually affect my application? Is that something that I'm going to have to pay extra for? Is that going to decrease my likelihood of, getting this through? There might be a bunch of questions that come up throughout the process of changing your name that, unless you are a lawyer or someone who's deeply familiar with the court system, they're going to be kind of tough to answer. And so these questions come up again and again as people go through this process. And the vast majority of information that's out there is geared towards people who have changed their name through marriage. And there's very
Mhm.
little out there for people who are transitioning or changing their name of their own volition. Um, and even on these state pages that are telling you here is how to legally change your name, it is rare for a state to actually mention like trans people anywhere. I think they don't mention it on the Massachusetts page, and that's one of the examples of better states for documentation. A lot of these states do not even have a page telling you what to do. It might just be a link to a PDF. It might just be like a blurb that hasn't been updated in years. And so it varies considerably from state to state. So, part of our work with Namesake too has been trying to think about like, how can we standardize these forms across lots of different states, different counties even, to collect similar information, output it in a sort of maintainable way, and make it easy for people to get through the process. And so the tech behind that, we are using, modern tech stack, TypeScript, React. We are using a tool called Convex for hosting our backend. And again, as MB mentioned, we are end-to-end encrypting all of the forms that she was filling out in that demo. So we don't have access to any of that personal information that you are entering in the form. It's all encrypted on your device, sent to us encrypted, and then decrypted when it comes back to your device. And so even if, we wanted to get at that data, we can't, trans people, I think, are already at higher risk. And so, collecting a lot of very personal information about a bunch of trans people is something that we don't want to do. And so we're very careful about the security measures there. And in addition to that, there are certain forms or certain fields like Social Security that we just never ask for. And we do ask, like, if you're going to fill this out, just do it by hand after you get the PDF, just for an additional layer of security there. Um, Other tools that we're using, TanStack Router, React Aria, which is a component library designed specifically with accessibility in mind so that anyone who is using a screen reader or assistive technology to fill out a form can do it very easily, which can be a huge problem with, PDF filling in general. Is it's not an accessible experience. It's very difficult to understand like how these forms are laid out, what information is required, how to go through it. And so making sure that that all is accessible to the widest range of people is very important to us. And then a couple of other technologies that we're using for sending email, for formatting code, and then for uh, extensive, end-to-end tests, both for accessibility and then unit tests to make sure that, as we're building things and as we're pushing out new versions and new forms, that nothing is breaking. So you can read more details about all of the technology that we're using on our GitHub and in our contribution guide. And if you would like to get more involved with Namesake, all of our code is open source. Poke around, take a look at the open issues. If you have technical expertise and you're also building things for the web, we welcome pull requests. We welcome discussions on things, always trying to make this better. And, so much of the spirit of Namesake is taking all of this communal knowledge that we have as trans people and as technologists and combining that and making something that works better for everyone. If you don't have technical expertise, but maybe you've navigated the name change process on your own, or have, just want to provide support and encouragement for people, you can join us on Discord. And we have people sharing about that process there. Um, we have we're on social media, so you can follow us on Blue Sky, Instagram, LinkedIn. We have a newsletter that we very rarely send messages out on, but every once in a while, trying not to clutter up people's inboxes. And then finally, we're actually in the process of like announcing this on our blog, but we recently became fiscal sponsored by Superbloom Design. And so through them, we have 501(c)(3) nonprofit status. You can donate to us to help support our work and, build more forums, assist more trans people. If you are interested in any of these links, all of them are available at our website at namesake.fyi. I'll also try to get a PDF version of this presentation that we can share around after this evening, if folks want to click through that. And then, yeah, that is most of our presentation. Any questions? I guess we could take Q&A now.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, thank you both so much. And just a reminder, if folks do have any questions, please drop them in the chat there, and get to them during the Q&A here. But yeah, while people are thinking about what questions they want to ask and typing them in the chat, a few I had, if you don't mind. I
Please.
was curious, and because when you were going through the demo, it looked like, right, it was very specific to Massachusetts. So I'm assuming once somebody selects, whatever, either what state they were born in or what their state of residence is, that kind of changes, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So far, we've only launched that experience in Massachusetts. We do have a
Oh, okay.
roadmap for other states, and New York is next on our list because we're both here. So it makes sense. We know folks here on the ground, and we think that those on the ground partnerships with folks who can assist are really important. So building the support network of legal assistance in states is another big part of the process.
Great. Yeah, and can you, I guess, kind of walk through like what that process is looking like with various states? Is it, yeah, it's kind of partnering with certain organizations? I'm assuming like getting maybe some lawyers involved with details on how to fill out particular forms, or what does that process look like?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Yeah, it has been mostly partnering with trans orgs, or trans, legal orgs, nonprofits that are running these sorts of clinics on a regular basis. So, Fordham University here in New York has a program called Atlas, which is an acronym for something that I can't remember right now. But they help trans folks with the process, and the same in Massachusetts with MTDC. And so, through having run these clinics on a regular basis and, fielding a bunch of questions from people, they understand the nuances and like ins and outs of the process. Um, and it varies considerably from state to state what it is, what information is required, how long it takes, how much it costs. Uh, a few states have e-filing, and so in the states where that is a viable option, I think our goal is to redirect people towards that resource if it is accessible and works well. But in other states where that's not possible, I think Namesake can really help out. Um, I always like to say that, in an ideal world, Namesake wouldn't need to exist if all of our, civic services were up to par and it was really easy to change your name and have it propagate everywhere else. Like, we wouldn't need to be a thing. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And so I think there is an opportunity for us to assist right now. one, specific thing to call out is, Massachusetts technically does have e-filing, but through working with our partners at MTPC, they very rarely recommend that anyone pursue e-filing in Massachusetts because the experience is so bad. It is actually easier to fill out the forms and take them in person or mail them in than it is to use the technology that exists in the state, which is unfortunate. So yeah, the short answer is it sort of depends on state to state, but we really want to prioritize partnerships with trans orgs that really can know and recommend tailored advice about what the best way is to get through this process.
So we have a question from Al. The front end looks like it's built in TypeScript. Is there E2 end-to-end encryption built into the back end? Do you want to take that one as well, Ava?
Yeah, so I can speak a bit to that. Our full stack, one of the interesting things about about Convex, and one of the reasons that we chose it is it allows us to code full stack TypeScript, and so there is less of that sort of translation burden between front end and back end. Everything that Convex stores is encrypted at rest. So even things that we're not encrypting on our own. And then in addition to that, we are also encrypting, information from forms using a device key that's uniquely generated for each user. And so I'm not sure if that answers your question, Al. But we do take seriously, the security and the responsibility that we have to really safeguard this data. I don't want to have to look at it. I don't want to have to think about it.
No, no, and being open source is another thing that's really important to us there, because if there are researchers or trans folks that want to audit our security, it's very easy to do that. You can go look at our code base and take a look at how that encryption works, where it was introduced, and go through it yourself if you want to, and if you have the ability to. We have another question also from Elle about how the current administration has how much things have changed. Are folks still having issues with passports? Yeah, things have changed pretty quickly and are changing still with the current administration and their policies around passports and federal documents. We see this in our Discord all the time. Folks running into problems, asking questions, but also on social media. So keeping up with that is one of the reasons why it's so important to work with legal professionals, and why we're here talking to you and trying to gain more support, because it just takes a lot of resources to keep up with a rapidly changing political situation.
Yeah, and I will add to that, even just looking at the passport example on its own, I think it was one of the first executive orders that he signed. It was within like the first week that was like, we're no longer going to do X gender markers, and like it
Right.
has to be, whatever was assigned at birth. And, that was very uncertain for a while, where it's like, is this executive order going to take effect, or like what's going to happen? So there was a period where people were getting passports back with an incorrect gender marker, or that their application was just being denied, or their passport was being held, and people were uncertain. And then, the courts have sort of intervened, and there has now been a period of like, if you're going to update your passport, you should do it now. But it's still sort of uncertain, like what's going to change week to week. And yeah, the article that we shared about this administration urging the Supreme Court to then like strike down what the other courts had said. That was from like last week, and so this is just ongoing. And we didn't show an example of it, but we do have banners, for passport specifically and for other things, saying like, hey, here's some of the changes that are happening right now. Here are some of the legal risks. Here is sort of what organizations are recommending as sort of the safest course of action right now. And I think that is one area that Namesake can really help with, compared to just viewing like a .gov site. We want them to be accurate and up to date, but they're probably not going to say like, "Hey, you're at risk right now for if you try to do this." And that's one area that we want to make sure that people are, updating things safely.
Yeah, thank you. And so there's another question in the chat here from Joel, which was beyond cost, what states do a good job and who's on the naughty list as far as making it easy or not easy?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't have a full view of like all 50 states. I can speak to Massachusetts and New York since those are the ones that I'm most familiar with. Um, but things have gotten quite a bit better in these two states, I would say, over the past like 5-ish years. I have a friend who lives here and changed his name maybe like I want to say like 6 years ago. And at that point, the publication requirement, there was still a publication requirement in New York. So he had to publish his name change in a paper. And I think the one that everyone does here is like the Irish Times. Like on Long Island, they all publish in just like a tiny little section in the back of the paper, and you have to pay whatever fee it is to publish in the Irish Times. So and so has changed their name from this to this. Um, and a year or two later, by the time that I had gone through my name change, that was no longer a requirement. And it was as simple as just like ticking a box on the form. I would like to be exempted from this. And at that point, the court system was just sort of granting that to whoever ticked that box. And so, thankfully, that is no longer a case. It's no longer a cost that people have. It's not an additional wait time as you wait for things to get published and then have to get it and like attach it to your application. Um, it's a sort of similar thing in Massachusetts right now, where there is notionally a publication requirement. You can exempt it, as we showed in the demo, if you sort of use the right language and you get a judge who is maybe feeling in a accepting mood. I don't know. It's unclear. And so ideally, these requirements just go away altogether. But things have definitely improved. And even looking at the data from the trans survey, if we go back actually in here, we go back to oh, not too far. This data. So this is from the National Trans Survey, which took place in 2022. The one before this was in 2015, I want to say, and these stats were actually quite a bit worse. So I think the percentage reporting that they have the gender they want on their IDs was at like 66% or something. So it's come down in those years. Obviously, we want it to come down more and to improve more, but directionally, I would say some states are headed in the right direction. But then again, there are some states that are not. Florida, I think, in that same amount of time has just made it impossible to change your gender marker on driver's licenses and has, introduced a whole lot of other hostile legislation towards trans people.
Texas
And
is doing the
so,
same. Yeah.
Texas, Tennessee. And so it really depends on what state you are in and how seriously that state takes these sort of issues. So there's no clear and easy answer there. Uh,
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I guess kind of on similar vein, besides just like states, are you like when you were kind of looking into different processes, have you looked outside the US at all? I'm just curious, like in other countries, like what the process might look like, and if there's any kind of good countries out there versus bad countries, or if there's been any inspiration like that.
that's a good question. MB, I don't know actually.
I
You
don't
know.
know I don't know off the top of my head which countries make it easiest. That's a great question. We'll follow up on that.
Yeah, not the big. Yeah, I guess another question I was curious about is you had mentioned with the kind of tech side of things, the accessibility of it, and primarily using React Aria with the accessibility. I was curious, did you encounter any kind of difficulties with helping to make the form, accessible? How did you, yeah, if you did encounter any difficulties, kind of how did you overcome those difficulties to improve the accessibility of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um,
You've put in a lot of pull
I
requests to that effect, Ava. Like we're either working around issues in React Aria or finding the right way to do it or updating it or like testing a weird sort of Windows accessibility setting that we didn't know about. Like there's just with
mhm.
accessibility, there's so many different assistive technologies that you could be using and combinations of them that it's a lot of testing to get it right. And we probably aren't at 100% of where we want to be. We need more users with access needs using the platform and reporting things to us so that we can make it even better.
Yeah. I I would say the maybe the two accessibility issues that I am most concerned about right now are not uh, as like technical or like detailed in scope, but more like right now the form that we have is very long on one page, and there's probably an opportunity to break that up into multiple sections that are a bit easier to parse and you don't have to hold everything in your head at one time. And so I want to figure out a way to do that, to just have these smaller sort of bite-sized chunks. And there's a good balance to find there where you don't want one question on every page, but you also don't want like 50 on one page. So figuring out what that looks like. And another accessibility issue that I would love to improve on is really an issue of just like access generally. So right now our entire application is gated behind a login screen, and I would love to have more of it be accessible to people without registering for any sort of account. You can just see what information is there. You can fill out a form. Maybe it saves it to your device and you can create an account after that if you want. Um, the way that we've constructed it is designed such that we hope to only ever ask you for a piece of information once. I think part of the frustration of changing your name is it feels like you're just answering the same questions over and over again. Like, I had to do this for court order, now I'm doing it for passport, now I'm doing it for social security. And so the nice thing about sort of bringing this all into one platform is we can really like streamline all of that. So if you've already filled out your new name and your address and everything, we can apply that information to other forms as well. So figuring out how to do that, how to minimize sort of login or just like I don't want people to just like show up to our app and it's just like register for an account. Because like I wouldn't want to have to register for an account to change my name. I'm like, what information are you storing? Can I just like fill this out some other way? So I think there are ways that we can make that work. It's just a matter of doing that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and this kind of plays off that. Maybe a broader question. I am curious. Have now having built this, and thank you so much for kind of walking through the different tech that you are using. I am curious, like if you kind of had to start from scratch all over, is there any particular yeah, their tech choices, or you had also mentioned just kind of breaking up the process a little bit more so it wasn't quite as long. So either like changing some of the tech or changing some of the design aspects. If you kind of had to start all over
Do you want
again,
to
is there anything in
do you want to
particular
talk
you would
about
do?
Tailwind, Ava?
Yeah, well, yeah, we are using Tailwind, and I'm not so certain about it. I think it's very good for creating things very quickly and easily, and then as time goes on, it can become more of a maintenance headache. So that's one choice where I'm a little on the fence about. There were previous tech choices that
Oh yeah, yeah.
we made and have since moved away from. So the very first version of this application that Luke built with some folks before I had joined was on a low code app. named Bubble, and it did its job well, but there were like weird outages happening all the time. It was really difficult to update. It wasn't engineered in a way that if we wanted to expand to states beyond Massachusetts, that would be a very easy thing to do.
It was
There were
expensive. There were a
It
lot
was
of problems.
expensive. Yeah, there were a lot of problems. And so, since then, owning more of our stack and having that more open source space, I think has been a good move. There was a sort of interim phase where we were trying to use Remix. This is before you joined MB,
Mm.
but a platform that uh, tried to center itself more around web standards than React, but was also kind of fiddly to work with and like wasn't as maintained, and it's just sort of gone in a confusing direction. And so we moved away from that towards a more sort of standard tech stack. I Yeah, I don't know. Choosing tech for something like this is difficult. There are always trade-offs or things that you wish you would change at some point, but eventually just like making a decision and moving forward, I think is the way to go too.
Yep, sometimes that's what you have to do. Just pick something and go with it, and hope for the best. Well, yeah, I think we do have time for one or two more questions. If anybody has one, feel free to drop it in the chat there. I guess another kind of broader question I had, I know at the end of your presentation, you talked a little bit about how yeah, folks can contribute. I did just want to kind of give you or ask if there's anything else that you would see as kind of especially like an organization like Chai Hack Night and other civic tech organizations like us, how you would really see yeah, our members and our attendees being able to help out with Namesake.
Maybe we can just flip back a little bit to that how people can help slide, just to go over that quickly
Oh,
one more time. Oh, too far. Yeah. Yeah. So again, if you're technically minded, GitHub, we have issues tagged as good first issues. So if you just want to jump in, you don't want to learn the whole code base, you can work on one of those. And there's really good documentation that Ava worked on. So when I jumped in, I found it pretty easy to start making changes. I highly recommend it. And if you run into problems, you can hop into Discord. And then helping folks find out about us. The internet is very loud, and there's a lot going on all the time. And so if you know someone, especially in Massachusetts, especially a trans person trying to change their name, point them our way. And then financially, of course, if you have the means, we would appreciate that as well.
yeah. Yeah, we'll add that. Yeah, there's a contribution guide available on GitHub, and trying to do as best a job as we can of documenting things, making it easy to sort of jump in and get familiar. Although I understand that GitHub on its own can be a little bit of a leap for some folks, but definitely encourage folks if you even have a little inkling of desire there to hop in. We have a code channel on Discord where we also talk about things that are going on. Um, it's not a super intense, I would say. I think a lot of the foundation is in place now, which is nice. And, going forward, our efforts are going to be more on, expanding state by state, adding information, adding content there, and making sure that we have all these forms that are available for folks. And you can definitely help with that. We have a lot of guides up there too for working with PDFs and filling that out, and it's sort of designed around a schema that makes it easier to work with. Since PDFs are a strange technology. um, so yeah, definitely welcome contributions, and yeah, all us engage, donate if you have the means, and continue to fight for trans people, in Illinois or whichever states y'all are dialing in from. These are really uncertain and scary times, I think, for a lot of folks, and it can feel overwhelming at times to, you know, be building a tool like this even, where it's like, well, if, they take away the right to do this altogether, like what difference does it make? But, I keep myself going by saying like, as long as we're pulling on one of the threads that is in this like big knot, that is worth doing. So to the extent that you all can pull on your individual threads that are helping to undo this big knot, I think that's helpful.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you to both of you for all of the work that you're doing to make the process easier and better, given the current constraints that we are in. So thank you so much for all your work. And yeah, thank you for walking through Namesake and the presentation here this evening. And yeah, I was just going to double check the chat. I don't think there are any other questions, and we are pretty much at time here. So thank you so much again for joining. And now we'll transition over to our breakout portion of the evening. So if everybody wants to stick around, we'll just finish up the recording here and then move over to that part of the evening.